kind of bothers me that you view this an entitlement thing. Right.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the February 11 meeting of the Finance Committee. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Moved Mr. Molino, second Evelyn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Request, item 3.1, request for transfer of funds attached for committee approval. Evelyn, second. Edna, thank you. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor of action item 3.1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 3.1 is carried. Item 3.2, request from the Treasurer's Office, request for a new contract with Bartlett, Pontiff, Stewart, and Rhodes PC for bond counsel services relating to the expansion of the existing court space. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this item to the floor for discussion. Fred, Jean, thank you on the second. All those in favor? Okay. Discussion. What do we have here, Mr. Treasurer? Fred?
Just a question on that. If we need the bond counsel for the wood part for the fence, can they do that also?
I already have a counsel for bond anticipation notes. We already have somebody on that we've been using since I came here. So we have somebody for that.
I may, Chairman. The short answer to that is yes. Mike does have somebody that he uses, as you know. I think that's only I prepared a bond resolution, which I can hand out for that work. I know that's kind of off topic, but the way that I thought that would be is about a $250,000 allotment, Mike, is
roughly,
what we roughly. So we do have somebody on board that can handle that work. The way that the RFP went out for the court expansion bond counsel, it included general services as well. But I think Mike has a long time established relationship with the firm that he uses as county treasurer, and would certainly encourage that to be continued.
All right. I hope everybody has this tabulation sheet. It should be in your packet. Basically, an RFP was put out. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 responders. I put this out as approval of a contract to enter into with Bartlett, Pontiff, Stewart, and Rhodes, because basically they were the low bidder. However, as has been pointed out by our county attorney, general municipal law allows us to go with somebody else if we feel that it's justified to use somebody else. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is that ORIC has always been in the past our bond counsel when we've done things. I'm not saying that we have to go with them. I just want to make the committee aware that that is a possibility if you decide to go in that route. I personally don't feel that we're going to suffer if we go with a local firm, which I would like to do anyway. I like to use local people, local firms. ORIC is from New York City. They are 2 blocks away from our fiscal advisor in Manhattan, which would make it a little easier there. However, communication being what it is, I don't think that that's a big factor. I would stress that we need to do this today. We need to get this rolling. If this bond is going to be done, we need to do it ASAP to keep the interest rate as low as possible.
Well, it's the pleasure of the committee.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to point out that based upon Mike's analysis, there are actually 3 firms in this analysis that you could very easily choose among for purposes of your bond counsel. And as Mike alluded to, General Municipal Law 104B, because this is an RFP process, not a bid process, gives us much more flexibility in selecting who we may want to use in this instance. Let me just read you a couple of passages from GML 104B that I pointed out to Mike and to our chairman, Chairman Garrity. This is right from the statute. Justification and documentation of any contract award to other than the lowest responsible dollar offeror, setting forth reasons such award furthers the purposes of the section. The purpose of General Municipal Law 104B is in part to assure the prudent and economical use of public monies in the best interest of the taxpayers of the political subdivision or district to facilitate the acquisition of goods and services of maximum quality at the lowest possible cost under the circumstances, and to guard against favoritism, improvidence, extravagance, fraud, and corruption. That's the purpose of 104B. Because you do not have a long-standing relationship with Bartlett Conifer Bond Council or with Hawkins Delafield Wood for Bond Council, you do have a long-standing relationship with Orrick Harrington for Bond Council. You could, because these numbers, as you can see, are very, very close. All three are very, very close. I just wanted to point out to you, you could very easily, under 104B, make a determination that based upon your long-standing relationship with Orrick, their experience, their expertise, the services that they've provided, which has been exceptional, you could very easily make a determination that Orrick gets the award here as compared to any of the other two firms. You could make that very same determination with the other two firms if you wanted to. Certainly they're all experienced, all three are all experienced firms. But I just wanted to point out to you that this is different than a bid. This is an RFP. You have much more flexibility based upon sort of the value that you think you're going to be getting from that firm for the type of services that are going to be provided.
Bud?
Thanks. I think it all boils down to qualifications. Qualifications are equal. I prefer to stay with the hometown group. Would you say the qualifications are the same?
Yes, they're clearly qualified, in my opinion.
I'd make a resolution then to award the contract to Bartlett Conifer.
We already have a motion to do that when it was brought to the floor, but,
I think we voted as well.
did we vote? No, we haven't voted. We have not voted yet.
The motion was to bring it to the floor.
Yeah, the motion was to bring it to the floor for discussion, and, any further discussion? Fred?
I see it doesn't include certain things, including presentations to the rating agencies. Do we expect to have to go to the rating agencies on this?
That's just for one particular
Oh, that's
bid.
just the one.
That's
Okay,
just for
right.
one particular
Fine,
bid.
okay.
Their base price was very low,
Mhm.
but when you factor in that, I think I handed out my sheet here, so I don't have it in front of me, but that it's like $330-something an hour for that firm to do additional work, and it would only take about 3 or 4 hours worth of their work to blow over the top of the low bidders. So
Do we expect to have to go to the rating agencies?
probably not, but they want $335 an hour to write the bond resolution, which may take a couple of 3 hours of their time to do that. The other groups are all putting that in as part of their base fee. So when you look at it that way, and there's other things that have to be done that the council, that particular bond, or that particular group said that they were gonna have to charge additional per hour rates for.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mike and I work very closely on these matters together, and typically what we do, at least it's been my experience since I've been here, typically what we do is Mike and I actually draft a bond resolution. We think it contains all of the critical elements, all the critical components, and we forward that to our bond counsel, and then they will make whatever changes they think are necessary. So that's how we've been working this. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what we've done with the perimeter fence, the bond resolution right here, that we would forward to the firm that Mike uses for that purpose. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, I think I would like to just point out again, for the record, as I've done on any number of occasions, is my prior relationship with the Bartlett Conifer firm. I was a principal in that firm. I left that firm in 2011 to become county attorney, and I do receive compensation from that firm pursuant to my buyout agreement. So I just wanted to make that disclosure once again for the record.
All right, any further discussion for, the county treasurer? There being none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Bartlett Conifer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is carried. Item 3, referral from the Criminal Justice Committee, District Attorney, request to amend the county budget to include unanticipated revenues and appropriations in the amount of $10,000 in grant funding. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor. Matt, Jean, thank you. Discussion. There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 3 is carried. Item 4, referrals from the Economic Growth and Development Committee, Planning and Community Development for A, request to amend the county budget to establish CD 74 and reflect the receipt of unanticipated revenues and appropriations in the amount of $400,000 for the New York State Community Development Block Grant Program as part of the 2014 Regional Economic Development Consolidated Funding Application. Chair will entertain a motion.
I move A and B.
We have a motion to approve A and B. We have a second, Mr. Merlino, thank you. Any discussion? Alrighty. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 5, refer from the Health Services Committee, Office of Community Services, request to amend the 2015 county budget to reflect the receipt of unanticipated revenues and appropriations in the amount of $100,000 for the Office of Community Services. These are pass-through funds from the New York State Office of Mental Health to provide 100% funding for the Parsons Child and Family Center contract, which is being increased from $325,624 to $425,624. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 5. Bud, Matt, on the second. Thank you. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 5 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 5 is carried. Item 6, referral from the Human Services Committee, Employment and Training Administration. Request to amend the 2015 county budget to reflect the receipt of unanticipated revenues and appropriations in the amount of $15,203 from the Federal Trade Adjustment Act for the training of 5 dislocated workers. Chair will entertain a motion to bring item 6 to the floor. Jean, Edna on the second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 6 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 6 is carried. Item 7, referral from the Occupancy Tax Coordination Committee. Request to authorize the issuance of a serial bond and bond anticipation note in the amount of $221,906 to cover the purchase and installation of a fence and masonry columns at the festival space of the Charles R. Wood Park, contingent upon determination that the use of occupancy tax discretionary surplus and reserve funding is not sufficient to cover the cost, and bonding is determined to be necessary due to the time frame. The Occupancy Tax Coordination Committee recommends that the resolution for the serial bond and bond anticipation note be presented at the February 20, 2015 board meeting, with the understanding that the resolution would be rescinded if it were determined to be unnecessary. Chair will entertain a motion to bring item 7 to the floor. Fred, Bill on the second. Discussion. Fred, Bill?
At the conclusion of this meeting, the subcommittee will meet with the treasurer to discuss this necessity of the bonding.
Fred? Basically, those that may not have attended the meeting, we think we're going to cover this with OCTAX monies. The question became, are we going to need to bridge it in some fashion? If we do, this is how we'll do it. If it's not required, we won't do it. It's basically what's happening here. Any other questions?
Just an update on the project. We had a meeting, I think it was the day before yesterday, of the PMEC. And there was a proposal by the DPW engineers to consider putting in like a steel beam all around the perimeter and then mounting the fence to that, so it'd be easy to take it out and replace it, but it would add like $80,000 to the cost, so we voted there to not do that.
We appreciate that, Fred. Any further discussion?
If you do go to bond, who's gonna pay for it? Where's the money coming from to pay the bond?
Well, the two things that have been discussed is the occupancy tax, because when we discussed this at the committee, the mayor had 14 events booked. He now has 17 events booked. So it's clear that it's going to bring in a tremendous number of people into the county. And so the two things that have been discussed is out of occupancy tax, because there was an amount with a revised occupancy tax plan that was allocated for the C.R. Wood Park. The other alternative that there's been discussion off and on for quite a few years is use of some of the Westbrook Road parking lot revenue, because a lot of that revenue is going to be generated by the events at the festival space. But Paul Dusick pointed out that that revenue has already been spoken for in the current year's budget. But if it can't be covered under current occupancy tax, if it's covered under current occupancy tax, then you don't have to worry about the bond payments in the future. If it's not, I think that's still to be determined, but there won't be any impact on, if it was all paid out of the bond anticipation note, there wouldn't be any impact on the 2015 budget, it would just impact the 16 budget.
Chairman Garrity?
Checkbook away.
Yeah, the cost to Warren County is 62%, correct? 38
Right.
by the village?
Right, but what the village has requested is that if it is handled through the bond, that the county do the complete bond, and then the village would pay 38% of the bond payments, or bond anticipation note
Yeah,
payments.
oh, it's still 6238.
Yes.
Ready.
Okay, yep.
We're ready for the question. All those in favor of item 7 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 7 is carried. Item 8, referrals from the Public Safety Committee, Office of Emergency Services. Request, item 8A, request to amend the 2015 county budget to carry over $59,399.85 in unexpended grant funding received from the FY14 State Homeland Security Program. Cheryl?
A through G.
Love it. Good motion. We have a motion to approve items A through 8G. Do we have a second to that? Mr. Merlino, thank you. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion is carried. Item 9, referrals from the Public Works Committee, DPW. 9A, request to appropriate a total of $286,123.94 from the County Road Fund balance, D909, to various road project equipment rental budgets, which should have been offset at the close of 2014, but were inadvertently overlooked. This request pertains to a transfer of existing funds. No new money is requested. Chair will entertain a motion to bring 9A to the floor. Mr. Merlino, second. Was that Evelyn? Second from Evelyn. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 9A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, item 9A is carried. 9B, Parks and Recreation Railroad, request to amend the 2015 county budget to reflect the receipt of unanticipated revenues and expenditures in the amount of $500 for Pearsall grant funding received at Up Yonder Farm. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9B. Matt, Bud on the second, thank you. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor of 9B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, 9B is carried. Item 10, referral from the Support Services Committee, 10A, at the December 15, 2014 meeting, the Support Services Committee made a referral to the Finance Committee requesting consideration of establishing an insurance deductible reserve fund using $22,384 the county saved on the annual premium for property and casualty insurance by increasing the deductible for law enforcement professional liability coverage for 2015 from $25,000 to $50,000. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for discussion. Mr. Taylor, Edna, Martin, can you comment on this one?
Frankly, I have some minimal knowledge about this. I don't know if there's,
You can jump.
yeah.
At the committee meeting, we discussed, Support Services establishing a reserve to use for, insurance deductibles, because when we have a claim, the departments don't budget for the deductible. So we discussed in this case, this would be a savings. This would be a good way to start this, reserve and then budget for it in the future. Same way as we do with the computer reserve and
Bill?
What's the difference in the premium? For $25,000 to $50,000?
Isn't it the 22?
How much?
I think it's
It is the 22,000. What the discussion with the committee was that we decided that the amount of money we were saving, which would be the 22,000, because it was already budgeted, we would take it and use it to establish the reserve. And so that's where the 22,000 came from.
Well, my concern with that is the 22,000 is good for one occurrence, but if there's more than one occurrence, you're gonna have to come up with 50,000.
Right now, there's nothing in the budget for any of it, so we would have to find 50,000, say, from somewhere. However, if we have the 22 in there and we give 50,000, then at least you have 22 and you only have to come up with around 30. And the thought was, if I understood the administrator at the time, was that in future budget cycles, perhaps we could increase the size of the reserve going forward.
That way we're not, scampering around having to look for, I see Frank over there shaking his head, yes, you know, trying to find, particularly later in the year, try to find $25,000. At least we have some amount budgeted, to, handle the deductible should we have to. But I understand your point, Bill. It could go more than that depending upon the number of events. You're absolutely right. Fred?
I think if you look at the past history, I think there's been many instances where we've had to pay a deductible on claims. So that I think it's a good idea to have a reserve. If we have the source that's already budgeted.
I think it's a good idea to have a reserve too, but then my question is, do we increase the, liability coverage from 25 to 50,000 on deduction?
Well, but I think what we had voted to do was to increase the deductible from 25 to 50, and that's what generated the 22,000 in savings.
Oh.
Right. It's the, increase, it's like car insurance, that by increasing the deductible, the premium goes down, so it's advantageous if you can afford to do that. It's advantageous to do that.
Okay.
All righty. We have an insurance expert here on the Finance Committee. Bud, would you concur?
I would.
All right, there we go. It meets with Mr. Supervisor Taylor's stamp of approval. Former. All righty. All those in favor of item 10A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 10A is carried. Item 11, requests item to be discussed by the county administrator. 11A, journal report identifying transfers authorized by the county administrator. You recall, it's this packet you have right here. We passed legislation, but that it would have to, for full transparency, the transfers that were administratively done have to be reported at our monthly meetings, and that's what's happening here. I think you can see why it's necessary. It's a busy budget. If you have any questions at any time regarding the journal, of course you can bring them up at the meetings, or you can contact the county administrator's office, and I'm sure you'll get your questions answered. Item 11B, we don't need to have a resolution accepting this. I don't believe it. 11B, request to appropriate funds in the amount of $60,000 from the Computer Reserve Budget Code A895 to the Information Technology Office Equipment Reserve Budget Code A1680 220.1 for the purchase of computers and related equipment and software. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 11B. Bill, Evelyn, thank you on the second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of 11B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 11B is carried. 11C, request to appropriate funds totaling $158,905 from the Vehicle Reserve Fund Budget Code A896.00 to departmental budgets, Sheriff and Civil Defense to purchase vehicles. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 11C. Evelyn, Matt Sokol on the second. Any discussion? We're ready for the, just one quick question. Do we know how many vehicles?
2.
What was that?
130,000 for the sheriff,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a truck for the civil defense for our emergency services.
All righty, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of 11C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 11C is carried. Item 12, request item to be discussed by the county attorney. Request for additional funding to support the costs of special counsel retained in connection with the Gillette lawsuit against Warren County. The county administrator has recommended these funds be transferred from the contingent fund to the county attorney's legal transcript budget code A1420-440. The county administrator has also noted that the amount of funding necessary to sustain the special counsel costs for the year will be projected by, Mr. Affordue, and it should be understood that Mr. Affordue will only be able to provide an estimate of the cost based on his best judgment of what legal proceedings will cost. Chair will entertain a motion to bring 12A to the floor. Bill, Jean on the second, Supervisor Merlino on the second. Discussion, Martin?
Mr. Chairman, I've asked special counsel to provide an estimate, so that I would be able to distribute that to the committee for consideration. That's still in the works, so with your permission, I would ask that this matter be put over to the March meeting.
Do we have a motion to table? Jean and Matt Sokol on the second to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Item is tabled. Item, requests, items to be discussed by the county administrator continued. B, a request to authorize an annual contract with Warren County SPCA in an amount not to exceed $8,000 for contractual services such as investigations of complaints regarding cruelty to animals, necessary court proceedings to correct these conditions, removing, carrying, or putting up for adoption and or destroying otherwise disposing of abandoned and or injured distressed cats and domestic animals, inspecting dude ranches, retaining the services of humane officers as examples. Chair will entertain a motion to bring item B to the floor. Evelyn, second. Fred Monroe on the second. Any discussion? Supervisor Sieber?
I just wanted to bring up briefly that I have had the opportunity to speak with Jim Fitzgerald from Queensbury, who's our animal control officer in depth, and he has some concerns regarding the contract. I know he's spoken both with Chairman Garrity as well as our county attorney and county administrator, but I just want to bring up the fact that the discussions that I've had with him have been significant, and he is interested in looking at some shared services. I know he's reached out both to the sheriff's office and to Brian LaFleur's office. And I would just ask that at some point perhaps you could speak with him, Ron, regarding some of these ideas. He just wants to kind of bat around some different ways to look at reducing costs, but as well looking at the county as a whole and trying to really focus in on what so many of our goals are in terms of those shared services. So I just wanted to make this committee aware. I wasn't quite sure where he reported to, so it took me a little while to figure that out, and I saw it on the agenda today, and maybe I don't know if you want to share additional details regarding that.
Mr. Chairman, at the end of 2014, there was a transition of the board of directors of the SPCA. There's I think, Rachel, it's fair to say there's a completely new board of directors.
There is, yeah.
So they're operating. They're very active. I've had any number of discussions with Mr. Fitzgerald. He's come to my office a couple of times. This $8,000 contract is essentially the same contract that we've had for the last few years. It's my recommendation, and it's budgeted for, it's my recommendation that we go forward with this contract. I think this will be the contract for 2015, but I do think it's safe to say that for purposes of the 2016 budget cycle, I think they're going to be coming here and asking for perhaps additional funds or shared services, et cetera, perhaps even shared services during 2015. Rachel, is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of lay the table for that, if you will. I think they will be coming asking for additional funds for 2016. When you consider, I'm just positing this, when you consider the breadth of services and the responsibility that they have under law and under this agreement, and you hear from them as to the types of services that they do and how they want to perform those services and complete those services, I think you'll understand why they're seeking additional funds. But at this, for 2016, at this point, I recommend this going forward, Mr. Chairman.
We're presently organizing ourselves for our first meeting of shared services. This will be incorporated. We'll make sure this is on the list. We're all involved in, animal control, and not only from a cost point of view, but from a service point of view, we'll make sure this is right there on the list. You can be assured of that. Fred?
My recollection from attending some of those meetings is that they have a very large surplus, and I think we definitely need to take that into account if they're asking for more.
That's correct. That's correct. They do have a large surplus, but they do also, I think you'll hear from them that with what they want to do. I won't speak for them, but with what they want to do and how they feel they need to accomplish that, that surplus may not go as far as one would think. Again, Rachel, I would wonder if you agree with that comment.
No, I think that's entirely accurate, and I think what we need to be open-minded about is that, like Martin has already said, it's a brand-new board of directors.
Right.
When they really dug into it and looked at the meat and potatoes of it, there's problems in terms of those operating expenses, but particularly when we look at the county costs. Our contract is $8,600, $8,100? $8,000, but the county cost is $31,000. So they're doing a whole lot of work for, really a big gap there. And I think in the past, perhaps there were different ways that they were able to make that up, but they aren't in the position to be able to do that going forward. And I think once you meet with Jim and maybe underneath that shared services, you'll see he's really thinking outside the box here on how we can get some of these costs down, but also the viability of the SPCA moving forward, and then how to really serve all of the towns in a collective manner as well under that auspice. I think it's worth really discussing, but I know he had some concerns about the contract this year, and as you said, moving forward, but would love that open dialogue to be able to talk about how we can close that gap a little bit between, $20-some thousand that they are not getting reimbursed for from the county.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're going to hear from them about a business plan that they have, and that business plan includes, I think, some ambitious fundraising that they tend to do throughout the county coverage on all of these types of matters. I think the surplus does come into play, increasing membership, but you'll hear all that from them. But and they are. I agree with Supervisor Sieper. They are thinking outside of the box and trying to come up with resources to cover their expenses so that they can provide great coverage.
Thank you. Well, we look forward to that presentation. Relative to the item before us, is there any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item B is carried. Item 13, we need a resolution to approve we need a resolution to approve items approved by the Personnel Committee. That would be including item 2. 2B. Excluding item 2B. Chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Taylor, do we have a second? Evelyn on the second. Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none. Kind of thin agenda this month, isn't it? But all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution is carried. Do we have any other business to come before the board? Mr. Chairman?
At the inter-county meeting, there's $1.5 billion for up-county economic development, and there's a resolution floating around from inter-county not to have to compete for this money, but to distribute the money based on population to the up-county, our area. And I got an email this morning from Randy Douglas, which is circulating. Herkimer County feels that it's tough to keep competing against one another, and Jim Bono, the chairman of the board out there, did a calculation based on population in our area, and if they would just distribute the money by county, it would be like $277 per resident in the county. So I didn't do the calculation, but I think it would be around $18 million that we would get in this economic development funding that we could use in the county. And his thing was, who knows better how to use the money than the counties versus having the state make you compete for the money. So I think it's something we need to look at in the legislative committee. I'll try to get you, if you didn't get the information, I'm sure, Fred, you may have gotten it. That's one thing floating around. I did talk to Randy Douglas. Essex County didn't sign on to doing it this way only because they feel that the governor is, his mind is made up to make regions compete against one another. So, they didn't sign into it, and we didn't agree to do anything at the inter-county when we combined inter-county meetings the other day at NISA. The other thing is, there is a potential that we could pass a local law for fireworks in the county. It's a short window. These are well, any firework could be hazardous, but these are the poppers or the wooden stick, sparklers. I see that Saratoga County, Don talked to me, I think Saratoga County already adopted it. So that's something we need to, I just wanna bring to everybody so it doesn't get lost. And I think, Joanne, did you bring the information back or somebody?
I have it, yeah.
Yes, we have the information, we need to get that to legislative. Very short window when they could sell these, but it is sales tax dollars to the community, so we may wanna look at it. And, you know, we know there'll be some folks that won't be for this, but I know Saratoga County did allow it, and I don't think anybody's lobbied Warren County to wanna sell this type of fireworks. So those are a couple things we learned for NICEAC, and Fred, I think probably it'll go to legislative, but it is financial too. So I just bring those up.
Schedule
You have it, okay.
for the next round.
That's it, that's all I got, so.
Fred?
I would just like to bring up also, I know you're aware of it, Chairman, but we've had a series of meetings on invasive species and trying to develop an Adirondack-wide plan, and several of us met with the Governor's Environmental Secretary in January and requested that the Governor put money in the budget for an Adirondack-wide plan. And others have been involved in that lobbying effort also, but there is $1 million in the plan, so we started a series of meetings on how to make recommendations on how that could be best used for an Adirondack-wide plan.
And
So
I
at
think,
some point, I think, you know, I'll ask this board to endorse a plan.
yeah, I was going to say, I certainly think that's appropriate, and I think that, that this board can, be proud of the fact that, you know, this now has grown, beyond, as it needed to, beyond, Lake George and Chester and Luzerne and the towns that have been struggling with this, and is now moving out to a more Adirondack, at least an Adirondack-wide initiative. And Fred, thank you for your tremendous efforts in this regard. I had the opportunity to attend the meetings there in Chester that have been held, and in each meeting there seems to be more players, more involved parties, and to the point where they're being phoned into the meeting from all over the Adirondacks, and I think that hopefully what we can do is channel some of that information through the invasive committee,
Right.
And share it with the invasive committee, bring in some people that as things evolve and develop, it's really heartening, I think, to see this.
Right. There's a tremendous amount of support for it, and there's, I guess, the first issue I can think of where everybody seems to be in favor of it and nobody's against it, so it's great.
It's just who pays for it. That's
Right, yeah.
that's
Where the
the-
money's gonna go.
All righty, any other business to come before the committee? There being none, have a motion to adjourn? Bill, Jean, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
There you go.